Hey there, friends, and welcome back to another 3-Minute Thoughts. My name is Derek, and in the next 3 minutes, we're going to take a look at Romans chapters 11 through 13. Paul here is still wrestling with the same painful question. If Israel is God's chosen people, why have so many rejected the Messiah? Paul starts by saying, look, I'm living proof that God hasn't rejected Israel. I'm Jewish and I believe. Then he reaches back to Elijah's story. Elijah thought he was the last faithful believer left, but God said, I've kept a remnant. Paul says the same thing is true now. Not all Israel has rejected Jesus. God always preserves a faithful core. Then Paul uses the olive tree image. Israel is the cultivated tree. Gentiles are the wild branches grafted in. But he tells the Gentile believers in Rome, don't get cocky. If God could graft Gentiles into his covenant promises, he can certainly graft Jews back in. God isn't finished with Israel. He's patient, working, and ever faithful. Then Paul reaches a kind of holy pause. He says Israel's hardening is partial and temporary, and somehow in God's mysterious plan, this opens the door for the gospel to be global, and then all Israel will be saved. In context, Paul isn't saying every ethnic Israelite will be saved automatically. He's saying God will continue calling and preserving a believing Israel until the end. The covenant promises are not canceled. If we were to take this and apply it to our lives today, it calls us to love the Jewish people, not to write them off, and it reassures that God never abandons his promises. We are allowed to be part of this covenant faithful. With Romans chapter 12, the whole letter turns a bit of a corner. Paul moves from explaining salvation to describing the life it creates. He begins with those famous words, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, being transformed by the renewing of your mind. In the ancient world, sacrifices were dead things placed on an altar, and Paul says, no. The whole Christian life is an offering, alive, ongoing. We don't have to die to offer ourselves to God. He then shifts to the church community. Just as the human body has many parts, the church has different gifts: prophecy, service, teaching, encouragement, generosity, leadership. These aren't spiritual resumes. They're ways the Spirit holds the body together. And then Romans 12 explodes into a picture of love that looks a lot like Jesus. Let love be genuine, seek to outdo one another in showing honor, repay no one evil, all the things. It's truly a remarkable chapter. You definitely got to read this one. Romans 13 brings us into the practical territory of Christians that Christians have wrestled with for centuries. How do believers relate to earthly authority? Paul writes to Christians living under Rome, not always friendly and definitely under persecution. Paul ends the whole thing with some urgency. He says, the night is far gone, the day is at hand. In other words, live like the people who know Jesus is returning. In other words, live your life to serve Christ, live your life to honor Christ, live your life to obey his word, and then you'll understand how to live under the authorities of this world. We belong to Christ above all. We engage the world with respect, wisdom, and love, and our ultimate hope is not in politics, but in the coming kingdom. Be well, friends.